when a fine unveiled hidden power, the Titan digital trial. Judge William Adler pounded his gavel, the resounding blow echoing through the packed courtroom as he fined the defense attorney. In that charged moment, tension gripped every soul present. Only seconds later, the judge's eyes widened in disbelief. He had just penalized none other than the Vice President of the United States. Titan Digital, a multi-billion-dollar tech giant accused of severe ethical violations ranging from massive data privacy breaches to illicit market manipulation, was at the heart of this high-stakes trial. Allegations claimed that the company not only harvested personal data without consent, but also manipulated algorithms to squash competitors and force small businesses to shutter. A guilty verdict here would have sent ripples across the corporate world. Judge Adler, known for his unwavering commitment to order, scanned the room with a piercing gaze. He had overseen many high-profile cases and prided himself on detecting when an attorney was out of his element. Today, however, the defense attorney stood before him with an unsettling calm. "Counselor, do you wish to respond before we proceed with witness testimony?" The judge inquired. The attorney, John Vance, rose slowly, meticulously buttoning his suit jacket. "Your Honor, my name is John Vance, and I intend to demonstrate that while the prosecution's case appears compelling, it is built on misinterpretations and selective framing of the law," he stated in a controlled, measured tone. Across the aisle, Prosecutor Linda Pruitt, a formidable federal attorney with a reputation for ruthless precision, advanced to the center of the courtroom. "Your Honor, the facts are clear," she declared. Titan Digital knowingly engaged in unlawful data collection, harvesting personal information without consent, and then profited by selling that data. They manipulated algorithms to quash competition, driving small businesses into bankruptcy. Internal memos prove that senior executives were aware of these practices, yet chose profit over ethics. Murmurs rippled through the gallery as Judge Adler's eyes flicked between the prosecution and defense. Elon Musk, the high-profile defendant representing Titan Digital, sat at his table with a steely expression. His case wasn't just another lawsuit. It was a corporate war masked as a legal battle. Musk's lead attorney, Russell Greer, exuded quiet confidence, but behind him, Musk's frustration was evident as his fingers drummed idly against the polished wood of his table. During cross-examination, John Vance called Special Agent Daniel Briggs to the stand, a tall, broad-shouldered officer in crisp uniform. "In your 15 years of service, you're well aware the Fourth Amendment protects citizens from unlawful searches, correct?" Vance asked. Briggs hesitated before admitting, "Technically, yes." Vance pressed on. "And did your team have a judicial warrant when you entered that residence?" With a tightening jaw, Briggs replied, "No, it was an administrative order." Vance seized the moment, so the individual exercised his legal right to refuse entry. That is not obstruction, it is simply the law. Next, Officer Daniel Reynolds recounted a chaotic raid. "When we arrived at an apartment, we encountered a human blockade. People reading from a Know Your Rights pamphlet distributed by Representative Ocasio-Cortez's office," Reynolds testified. "By the time we intervened, the targets had vanished." His firm, Yes, when asked if these messages encouraged resistance, painted a vivid picture of real-world consequences. Yet, Vance argued that if a company or individual operates strictly within legally disclosed boundaries, even if those practices are ethically questionable, they should not be deemed criminal. The right to exercise constitutional freedoms is not a crime, he insisted, forcing the jury to grapple with the difficult question: where do we draw the line between ethical lapses and criminal behavior? The trial's intensity escalated as Linda Pruitt called former Titan Digital Compliance Officer Sarah Levine to the stand. With trembling hands and a voice barely above a whisper, Levine recounted her role. "I reviewed internal policies and witnessed emails where executives discussed tweaking procedures to avoid regulatory scrutiny. When I raised concerns, I was dismissed, and eventually I was let go." Her testimony revealed a corporate culture bent on skirting ethical norms without overtly breaking any written laws. A cybersecurity analyst then detailed Titan Digital's algorithms, explaining that while many tech companies use similar strategies, Titan Digital had pushed boundaries further, manipulating user behavior to favor its own products while suppressing competitors. If such practices are clearly disclosed in the user agreement, the analyst noted, can they really be considered illegal? This question hung heavily over the courtroom. Judge Adler's patience was tested as the debate shifted from legal technicalities to broader questions of morality versus legality. This is not the time for philosophical debates, he cautioned, but John Vance pressed on, challenging the very foundation of the prosecution's case. If the law does not explicitly prohibit an action, should we punish it simply because it appears unethical? His question resonated, provoking murmurs among the jury. The prosecution then called CEO Robert Landry, the polished, silver-haired face of Titan Digital. Under intense scrutiny, Landry maintained, Titan Digital has always operated within the boundaries of the law. However, when pressed about internal warnings regarding unethical practices, his discomfort was palpable, a slight twitch or pause that did not go unnoticed. Then came the twist that would turn the trial on its head. John Vance reached into his briefcase and produced a folder containing official documentation verifying his identity and his temporary reinstatement as a practicing attorney. Judge Adler's expression shifted from stoic authority to stunned disbelief as he perused the documents. A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom. The defense attorney was, in fact, the sitting vice president of the United States. Judge Adler's voice quavered as he declared, Vice President, you should have disclosed your identity at the outset. For procedural misconduct, I hereby fine you. With quiet dignity, the Vice President accepted the fine. I accept the fine, as is my legal right, he stated calmly, deepening the courtroom's astonishment. What followed was a profound debate over the balance between legal interpretation and ethical responsibility. Vance argued that if a company operates within existing legal parameters, even if it exploits loopholes, punishing it sets a dangerous precedent. We are not here to criminalize practices that, while morally questionable, adhere to the letter of the law, he asserted. If the law is inadequate, then it is our duty to reform it, not to scapegoat those who operate within its confines. After hours of impassioned, closing arguments from both sides, Judge Adler finally dismissed the jury for deliberation. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation as every attendee, from journalists to legal analysts, sensed that this trial was more than a battle over corporate misconduct. It was a referendum on the limits of government power and regulatory authority. When the jury returned with a verdict of not guilty on charges of corporate misconduct and unlawful data collection, the courtroom erupted in a mixture of shock, relief, and intense debate. Linda Pruitt maintained a stoic expression, while John Vance offered a quiet nod, as if he had anticipated this outcome all along. The verdict forced everyone to confront a lingering question. Had the law simply upheld its own limitations, or had justice truly been served? Outside the courtroom, media outlets swarmed and social media buzzed with heated discussions. Headlines declared, Titan Digital cleared, a battle of ethics versus law, sparking debates nationwide over whether companies should be held accountable for unethical practices that remain technically legal. Vance, with his quiet yet resolute manner, had not only challenged the prosecution's narrative, but also compelled the legal community to re-examine the very framework of corporate regulation. As the courtroom emptied, John Vance gathered his papers and walked out with a measured stride. In his final address to the gallery, he remarked, Today is not about punishment, it is about progress. Let us use this moment to reform the laws that govern us. His words lingered, igniting discussions that would continue long after the trial had ended. The legacy of the Titan Digital trial promised to reshape debates over corporate accountability, regulatory reform, and the delicate balance between ethics and legality. It was a stark reminder that when legal loopholes shield unethical behavior, the call for change grows ever louder. In a system where the letter of the law can sometimes eclipse its spirit, exposing the truth and demanding better laws, remains a rallying cry for progress. Subscribe for more stories that challenge the boundaries of law, ethics, and corporate power.